Hi, I'm James Dean. I'm Managing Director of ESL UK subsidiary.
My name is Mason Grove. I'm the Business Development Manager for ESL.
ESL actually, it's a brand of Turtle Entertainment, GmbH. It's a Cologne-based company in Germany. They started 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, believe it or not. So there's a huge amount of legacy behind what ESL's been doing. And it started out as basically an online tournament platform for organising tournaments across lots of different titles back then. Over the last 20 years, it slowly became a production company as well, so you're actually making content of esports, if you like. And then, and in terms of its name, ESL, it actually used to stand for Electronic Sports League, but we don't use that anymore, so we're not allowed to say that, so maybe you have to cut that out.
Yeah, so traditionally in esports, it's been very difficult to reach that pinnacle of being a professional video game player. In recent years, we've seen some real progress in tiered progression, being able to hit that top level. Great ways is through national leagues. For example, the UK Premiership is a great way. It gives you that platform to really nurture your team's ability in a competitive scenario and then build up. Great success stories over the years. Recently, a team called Renegades competed in the UK Premiership League of Legends, won the season, and won a Challenger Series qualifier slot with Riot for League of Legends. They then smashed that group and they are now sitting in the Challenger Series, a UK-based team which came practically out of nowhere and now competing at a really high level. So you see more and more globally that teams can really build up and step through an almost funnel of how to get to the top, which is great.
I think to add to that as well, there's a level of play for everyone, right, and lots of different platforms as well. So we're not just talking about Counter-Strike and high-level Counter-Strike play here. We're talking from, we've got leagues in Super Smash Bros. We've got leagues in Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter. We've got FIFA leagues, and there's always a tiering system within that. So, whatever people like, if you want to take it to that next extra little step further, then you can join at quite a low level, group of mates, maybe not even met each other, online, jump into a competition. You might win a piece of hardware or even a bit of cash. But what it's setting out is A, it's super fun for everyone, but B, it's a progression to the next step, which will be national leagues and then finally, potentially, the big stages. It's an interesting thing because ESL actually has global offices all over the world. We have 15 global offices and studios. And there's some regions in the world where there aren't actually very high-end hardware at all. So for example, India, ESL India, which is a huge growth market in esports. And a lot of that is based on very low spec PCs. For just reasons of the infrastructure out there is just not as mature as the Western world. So what we find is that it's not, although hardware is super, super crucial because you see your career following the best of the hardware available. If you're a top tier Counter-Strike player, you want to get 200 FPS because that matters to you. And you want a 144 Hz monitor because it matters to you. But it doesn't mean you can't start out playing in esports. Systems that feature APUs, for example, are perfectly suitable to start a career in esports for sure. And there's lots of different titles you can do that with.
The biggest at the moment is Counter-Strike Global Offensive. That attracts the most viewers, the most prize money in the tournaments, and generally has the most cult following around its teams. Obviously, very close behind it is League of Legends. Always has been very prominent in the esports scene. Then there's other kind of tiers. You have Dota 2, Rocket League has quite a good esports following.
With the Premiership, we run Hearthstone as well, and I think we're keeping an eye on Overwatch. I think that's growing very, very fast. But I'd say the way we look at it, we don't always look at, well, what's the biggest esport out there? Because really, lots of people would turn around to you and say, well, StarCraft 2 once was the biggest esport and now it's dead. That's what they say. But it's not dead at all. There's still hundreds of thousands of people who play StarCraft on a regular basis. You know, Blizzard are still working on that title. And it doesn't mean that that community is just gone and done and dusted. It's actually quite still vibrant. It's just that it's not the biggest. So we just see esports as a whole is just lots of different games and different levels and different platforms, and it just sort of culminates into one term, which is kind of like saying, what sport do you play? Well, I play Olympics.
Yep.
And you can't play Olympics, you can only play individual things. So. The amount of times we're asked that, and you know who really decides is the community.
Yeah, always.
So if you look at what ESL actually does, we kind of just provide a service to the community. It's up to the community to make that esport title exist. We didn't predict Rocket League, for example. I don't think many people did. We obviously had a hunch that Overwatch would do quite well, but I think, you know, Battlefield 1 has got a good play. Unreal's doing some exciting things. I think we're seeing some different genres and formats coming that could potentially work. So it's a super difficult question, but a super exciting one as well. And basically, we look at the community to make that decision, really, and we're here to help that process.
So we just got to keep an eye out on ESL.
Yeah.
See what you guys.
Yeah. So basically, keep an eye out for a Pokemon Go esports tournament.
VR is super interesting because it's such an immersive experience, and we're starting to see like a big crossover because early adopters tend to be obviously PC users, but then there's obviously a different form of VR in terms of putting your mobile phone in a Google Cardboard or a VR headset. So there's two aspects of VR within esports. Firstly, there's the experience. So one of our big events that will have 100,000 people going to over a weekend, in theory you could put on a VR headset and experience that as if you're in the crowd, on the stage with the players and all that sort of thing. Then we can go into the actual game itself as maybe a spectator, so that's number one. The second opportunity is whether actual play in the VR space could actually become a esport itself.
Like Tron.
Yeah, who knows? And there's some really good examples coming very, very soon. And I think my personal feeling is that the first sort of VR esports programs will be around sports esports. So I think that's what we're looking at. And it will be super interesting to see how it develops. But the same rule applies. It's up to the community to adopt it.
I think in a nutshell, again, we've said it before, the community decides for us almost. We have to be very proactive and at the same time reactive. When something blows up, we need to be first on the scene to be like, oh, okay,
how can we help here?
Yeah, how can we provide our service and make content basically for the millions of people?
I think if you look at esports as an industry, which it rapidly is becoming, esports will be worth around $1 billion in a couple of years globally, which is quite staggering to think of this because only, you know, on a mainstream basis, people are only starting to hear about it. What esports sort of describes is a digital entertainment platform. It's us creating content around communities playing games and fan bases being created and big stages and spectacles and tournaments and leagues and big prize monies, lots of different revenue models that are similar to sports as a real sports. So I think what we're sort of describing is how we're evolving that digital entertainment. You know, how do people consume that content? How do people go to these events? Is it a festival or is it an expo, or are we just talking about, you know, just a stage with some players on there? And it really does evolve over time. There's also the aspect of, you know, YouTubers and influencers and all that other digital content that people are creating. Overclockers right now making a video. It's exactly that basically it's the new generation making digital content that's interesting to everyone. And gaming is a huge part of that. Esports makes a big part of that. And I think probably the biggest opportunity, I would say, is bringing in the hardware and the geeky side of things and sort of reviving that overclocking, the modding, and just making PCs sexy, and like the 8-pack stuff, all those really exciting elements of computing that has kind of sort of dissipated a little bit, because I think that community kind of are still there but not really getting out there in the big mainstream form, and I think that can change big time. So we sort of unofficially opened in February. It's quite a long time coming. It was a labour of love, sweat, blood, tears. It's super exciting. We went for like a dynamic idea. So what would really lend itself to the fact that games are changing really quickly, the content we're creating is changing all the time. Clients and sponsors, they're all looking for different atmospheres and different messaging. So we kind of thought, what would happen if we took a big black box and stuck in just loads of digital lights, basically. So the first thing we sort of positioned in there was the big LED screen. So it's actually one of
right behind the players.
Yeah. So we have a stage, and the LED screen there. It's one of the biggest in the UK indoor LED screens. Our supplier told us that. And what we can do there is that whole backdrop can change, obviously, dynamically. It could have a game on it, it could have a Skype feed on it, it could have stats and videos, it could have the map on it. It can be anything we want. And then we sort of extended that out with the strips you see on the side, which are all dynamic addressable LEDs, which kind of make that sort of depth of the studio. And so basically what we're trying to achieve is kind of the most versatile studio we could think of. And that's basically what it is. It's basically a blank canvas for digital content, I would say. So then, aside from that, I think the next biggest important element was the bar.
Yep, of course. First thing on the blueprint.
Yeah, it literally was. That's where the bar was going. That's super cool because although it's not designed for a huge amount of spectators, we actually, most of our productions don't have an audience there. It's just the kind of team members and teams waiting to play, or if they're not practicing, and then their small fan base, their groupies, if you like, and maybe some family. But when we do have an audience there, it's all about a very close-knit community feel of knowing they're in the space, they've made the effort to come, and they get a nice feeling of being involved. So we're obviously based in the Midlands. We chose that because it's a lot easier to get to from many places. Yeah.
Hence the Midlands.
The
It's
Midlands.
in the middle, so
There
Right
we go.
there.
Yeah.
right in the middle.
1 hour from London, an hour from the Overclockers office. So it's all about accessibility, creating that experience, but really the main output of that is to take any sort of gaming IP or anyone's IP and then just duplicating that into a physical space, and then all the services around it. So, and one of the biggest investments obviously was the broadcast equipment. So going back onto that digital entertainment platform, the money has really gone into the amount of hardware, cameras, video mixing equipment, graphics systems, the LED screen, to be able to create that show. And we have the capability of handing off to TV, which we have done already. So the Formula E showcase we did, that went to BT, and a few others that we're working on, Jinx TV, for example. So it's super exciting. That's exactly what it's designed for, and it's definitely achieving that, I'd say.
Absolutely. I don't have much more to add, obviously. James covered up most of it. But I think it's also a great place for the ESL guys to work as well. Guys have loved games.
Good point.
Guys are gamers through and through. That's basically how you get into the industry. And being able to have it to work in a space like that where the esports actually takes place, I think is really great for morale, and the guys love it there. So that too.
And I mean, around the world there's similar studios. So we've just got one opening in Paris. Brazil's just opened. Australia's just opened. In Germany we have 3 studios. In the US we have 5 studios. Poland is 2 studios. Asia, I think in Kuala Lumpur and Hong Kong. I want to say Hong Kong.
We'll say Hong Kong.
But basically, we've got these studios popping up all over the world. So that's really important for our partners because, you know, if we're talking to a game publisher and the community is really adopting that game and wanting to play tournaments and stuff, and we want to take that to the next level, it's really nice if we can just span that across the world. Yeah. So we're able to take the kind of ESL quality stamp and duplicate that anywhere we need to. And so that's kind of the blueprint of what we're trying to do. There's lots of ways the community can get involved in ESL as a whole. Obviously, to start with, you could be a spectator. So you just tuning in and watching some of the streams, getting involved, Twitch chat, social media and that sort of thing. So generally speaking, ESL has channels specific to each title. We also have a UK dedicated channel if we've got some UK specific work doing. We also do a lot of content, sort of white label for publishers and stuff as well. The next step is if you want to actually start playing. So jumping into some of the Go4 Cups or maybe try and qualify into the UK Premiership and beyond that, that's an obvious one. There's lots of opportunities to get involved on kind of the business side of things, so admin roles. We're always looking out for admins and good admins, which means that people can get involved with actual running of tournaments online, usually in the evenings or the weekends. And but what that rolls into is that, generally speaking, that's the first sort of team we look to if we need some additional resources to help us you know, grow a particular department or look for internal jobs or even help with events and stuff like that. And they're not always for free, it's not all voluntary. Sometimes there's some really good incentives. Yeah, and it can lead to a job as well. So there's always opportunities.
So you guys are attending Comic-Con as well?
Oh yeah, so
the stage there, right?
Yeah, so end of October is the second London Comic-Con of the year. We have quite a big presence there, so we've grown to like taking a whole hall now, which is great.
ESL Comic-Con soon.
Yeah,
it's literally that community, the Comic-Con community, is so diverse. The recent statistics showed 51% is a PC gamer, 38% console gamers. So we know that there's a big aspiration, and because that kind of show is so open to all new different genres and formats and interesting things, we always get a huge response in our tournaments there, and it makes them for some really exciting watching. And when we have a live audience for our finals, for the UK Premiership finals, it always looks great on camera as well, because everyone watching on Twitch online, we get around 25,000 concurrent viewers for our finals. You know, they feel that atmosphere, you know, because we, you know, capture that, and it's great. At the end of the day, I think PC Master Race will continue.
So thanks guys, thanks for coming in.
No worries.
We'll look forward to seeing what ESL brings us in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you for
Thanks
having
us.
us.
Jinx.